Ladies and gentlemen, we are excited because we're live during a crazy and critical time. And what you may have been able to see from the title that we gave you, we were going to spend some time talking about the Temple Mount. And by the way, we still are. We have a lot to talk about with respect to the Temple Mount. But what we are going to talk about in the immediate is something a little bit more significant in one respect. It's not nearly as significant in another, but we are going to talk about what's going on with the UN and, more importantly, the United States of America. And by the way, I'm going to just tell you this right now. If you guys like it when David talks, you're going to hear a lot of him talking on this one. And I'm going to tell you why, because if you don't know about the history of the Temple Mount, you're going to learn a lot about the history today because David's going to talk about it, and it's a really important piece of history, one that a lot of people are not aware of. And when you're not aware of it, then you're going to have a hard time understanding how all the other pieces go together. So we're going to have a conversation about that. We're also going to have a conversation about a few other things that relate to that. We're going to talk about Purim, which is something that a lot of people might not even know what that word is. I think almost everybody in our audience here knows exactly what that's all about. I
suspect that they do.
Yeah, we have a very astute group of people who are just smart. It's very, very smart people. So it's great to see that they were joined by that. I want to just read one quick super chat that came in, and that's Brad. He's always the first one to come in. He says, if they found life on Mars, Joe Biden would send them money. Yeah, that's true. I think his only plan is to mortgage Alaska and keep spending. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana on Biden's spending. That's a pretty funny statement, by the way. Kennedy is funny. If you ever heard Kennedy speak.
The one that talks weird?
Yeah, he has a southern accent.
No, he's got a weird voice.
Oh, no. That's a different Kennedy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's RFK. And that guy is a kook. I mean, his view on the whole injection thing, fine, but the guy's a God hater. I do not like him. I mean, look, no one should ever vote for him because he's all about killing babies. Isn't it funny to me how he will try to preserve human life by keeping people away from medical procedures that might harm them, but then he has no problem watching babies get killed through abortion.
So the pro-life Israel is going to be a separator between those we support and those we do not. But maybe in connection to what we're talking about, you got to be careful that you don't automatically support everybody that's pro-life, because we've had some people, even in the pro-life camp, who are actually come out against Israel lately.
Well, understandably, but I will never support anybody who is pro-abortion.
Okay.
Never. I can't do it. I just can't.
Okay. What is our future president's idea on abortion and pro-life?
He was completely against abortion when he was in office. And right now, there's been some rhetoric coming out of his mouth where he's saying there's certain instances where you can tolerate it. And I have gone to some people privately that are very close to him, that, first name basis, call him, talk to him. And I told those guys, you have to talk to the president. And you have to tell him that he's wrong. And that there's no way in the world he's going to get the love and support of people if he supports murdering babies.
Okay. So that's going to be a deciding factor in the coming election?
For me, it would be.
Okay, for most of the people?
I think for a lot of people it would be, yes. I mean, don't get me wrong. Nobody wants to vote for Biden. So
that's
people will vote for him.
Even the Arabs don't want to vote for Biden right now.
It's crazy. Okay, so we should probably have a little bit of a conversation on a couple of things. What's inspiring me wanting to talk about the Temple Mount a little bit is there is a growing rhetoric, I think, that is becoming more prominent, and that is amongst the Palestinians and actually non-Palestinians as well, people that are coming from other countries that in essence are affiliated. But they're all saying right now that the reason why they're fighting against Israel, which I think is just their second stage of propaganda, the reason why they're fighting against Israel is because Israel wants to build a temple on the Temple Mount. And they're using the red heifers and all that, which, by the way, we're going to do a very, I've got a 48-minute show that's already been recorded on the red heifers that I'm releasing on Friday. But this is very interesting to me because they are basically saying in Arabic that the reason why they've attacked is because of Al-Aqsa being threatened as a result of this temple being built. Which, by the way, it's interesting. I think that if the temple is going to be built, which most people believe this, that are in part of this camp that want to see it rebuilt, it'll be built on top of the Golden Dome, not Al-Aqsa, right? But that's a completely different subject. So what I wanted to do was talk a little bit about something that a lot of people might not be completely aware of, and that's the history of the Temple Mount.
Well, first thing, I can't help it, okay? But go back to the clip that I made 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
About Al-Aqsa and Temple Mount.
That's right. That's a very good clip, by the way. Very good video.
That's going to start off, and that's going to give you a visual what the Temple Mount is. But let's do a quick history overview. You're looking at the Temple Mount right here behind us. I like it the fact that James has a learning aid here right behind me right here. But let's go off that God told Abraham to go to Mount Moriah. Moriah literally means my teacher, Moriah, and to sacrifice Isaac. He did not do that. And can you pull up the picture that I see underneath the picture right there?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. That was actually what I was looking for.
There we go.
I was going right for that.
All right. So the mountain called Moriah is not a big mountain. It's not a huge mountain.
I need to go over there really quickly. Hold on just
It's actually a small mountain between two valleys that some of you know the name. The Kidron Valley is on the right side or on the eastern side. The western valley is called the Hinnom Valley. There's a smaller valley running through the middle of the ridge. And that hill, and I'm going to call it a hill. I don't know if you know, but famous tour guide joke. Everything in the Holy Land gets automatically upgraded. That's how our hills become mountains and our lakes become seas, and so forth and so on. Our creeks become rivers. But Mount Moriah, or the Temple Mount we call today, was where Abraham almost sacrificed Isaac. It's where David was punished by the angel. It's exactly where Solomon, because of the punishment of David, built the temple that was the first system of salvation and redemption, right smack on the top of that mountain. Now, by the way, a lot of people are surprised. Everything in Israel is rock. So the mountain is made out of limestone. Sorry, it's sediment bedrock. And Solomon built the temple right smack on the top of the mountain right there. That temple was destroyed by the Babylonians when the Babylonians sacked Jerusalem, and the whole story of Jeremiah. We went off to
586 BC,
and we sat on the rivers of Babylon and remembered where we were and how terrible everything is. The Babylonians were replaced by the Persians, and Koresh, who was the great Persian emperor, actually allowed Ezra and Nehemiah, the whole story, to come back and rebuild the temple on the site of that mountain. By the way, the Persians were very, forward-looking, because they allowed us to come back. They allowed people to come back to their ancestral homelands. Why did the Jews come back to Jerusalem? Because that is our ancestral homeland. And during the Persian period, we rebuilt the second. By the way, something else that happened during this exact period, is the whole story of the Book of Esther. So the whole story of the Book of Esther is literally connected to the rebuilding of the temple in Ezra and Nehemiah, and that's the holiday of Purim that we just now celebrated yesterday.
So can I ask you a quick question? And I know I'm hitting the fast forward button. We're going a little forward because you said it. You didn't complete the sentence, but I knew where you were going. You talked about the building of the second temple. Why is it then that they call Herod's temple the second temple and the future temple that's coming the third temple? Can you explain that a little bit?
Okay, so when Ezra and Nehemiah come back, they build a little. I know it's hard to say it like this, but they built a little dinky temple that was so small compared to the original temple that Solomon built that, according to the Bible, they cried when they saw it.
Right.
Then again, Persians are replaced by Greeks. Greeks actually desecrate the temple, and we have to reinaugurate. That's the celebration of Hanukkah. Again, see the movie we're putting out today. That'll connect to that. The Greeks are replaced by the Romans. And long story short, and during the Roman period, a little man with a big ego called Herod the Great decides to renovate the temple, meaning he takes the temple that Ezra and Nehemiah built, doesn't, according to what we understand, doesn't completely rebuild it, doesn't destroy it and rebuild it, but actually renovates it. The story says that he actually put a scaffolding out around the old one. He hung the priests from ropes and taught them how to use hammers and chisels and rebuilt a bigger, grander, more wonderful temple on the same site. So it's still considered the second temple, though it has been reinaugurated or renovated.
Yeah, I got it. So it is oftentimes referred to as still the second temple because it was renovated.
It was renovated, and it so because the first one wasn't destroyed, and then the second one, the second one wasn't destroyed.
Right.
Okay, it was renovated, so you don't have a destruction of the temple like you had after the first one. What you're looking at behind here is part of the temple platform. You can see that big wall around the bottom.
Right.
That's part of the temple platform, the whole platform that he built around. And where you see that golden dome, according to everything that we know, okay, and where you see that golden dome in the picture on the top is where the original temple was. And that was a temple at the time of Jesus. And you're looking at that big square boxy kind of compound, which actually is Herod the Great turning the mountain into a platform. I don't have a baseball cap, but if you take a mountain like this, can you all see me?
Oh yeah, let me make the
do that.
screen bigger here so that everybody can see.
If you take a mountain like that, okay, and you put walls around the four sides of the mountain, you can actually see this is one of the walls around the mountain. And at the end of the walls around the mountain, you put a roof on top. Instead of a rounded off mountain, you get a big platform that is 44 football fields in size. And that is the Temple Mount that you're looking at right here behind us. That is a big, massive building. If I gave you this picture from this vantage point on the Mount of Olives at the time of Jesus, the golden dome that you see in the middle of this picture, okay, sits on where the temple was. If the temple of Jesus at the time of Jesus was there, the temple building would have broken the horizon in this picture from this angle.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to give you an indication how massive the temple would have been, okay? And maybe since we are going into, we just had Palm Sunday and we're going into the story of the resurrection, when Jesus comes down the hill and looks at the temple and starts crying, okay, he says, no two stones will be left one on top of the other. The people that were walking with him with the palm branches and yelling Hosanna couldn't understand what he was talking about.
Right.
And just to give you an indication of how massive that was. The sad thing is that after Herod completely renovates the temple, okay, 71 AD, as a result of the Jews rebelling against the Romans, the Roman commander Titus completely conquers the city of Jerusalem, completely destroys the temple in Jerusalem. And that is what we call the destruction of the second temple. And that platform that you see behind me has been void of temples, okay, since 71 AD. The problem is that the Muslims came here in 691 or 690, and they decided to turn the Jewish holy site, the Jewish and the Christian holy site, into a Muslim holy site. And they're the ones who connected an event that took place in the Quran in Surah 17, where Muhammad flies out to the furthest temple, the furthest mosque. The furthest in Arabic is Al-Aqsa, or on the edge.
That's right.
And that's what turned the whole compound that you see behind us from the temple platform to the noble sanctuary, it's called in Arabic. And that's what turned the Golden Dome into a holy site for the Muslims, and the gray dome that you see on the left of the temple platform into the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site for Muslims in the world.
Yeah.
So that is the history, and you've just now done the shortest history that I've ever done on the Temple
Hey,
Mount.
but listen, very valid and very important because there's a lot of questions that come up here. Now, you mentioned 71 AD. I've heard some people say 72 AD, and the most common statement is Titus destroys in 70 AD. Which one is it?
Well, I'm just going to say 71. The conquest of Judea as a result of the rebellion probably started even before that. The end of the conquest was later. It was after the Romans finished destroying the temple in Jerusalem and taking over Jerusalem. They still had to conquest the west of Judea. So we're talking about probably about a 3-year war that took place.
Right.
And let's put it this way. The Romans did not have an easy time. I mean, if you want to do something interesting, there's a very good 2-hour video about the conquest of Jerusalem by the Romans in 71 AD. A guy, I don't know if you know that there's, I think in Kings and Generals, there's a TV video game, and they use video technology in order to illustrate how the Temple Mount was destroyed. It was conquered and then destroyed. It was a very harsh and very, very terrible time. We have a lot of information about the period from our good friend Josephus Flavius. So if you want to connect to that. So we know what happened on the temple. We know what the temple was. We know where it is. There's a very tight archaeological connection between Mount Moriah, the Temple Mount. By the way, the other side of Mount Moriah, just to the left of what you see over here, is where Jesus was crucified.
Right.
And the connection between the temple and the sacrifice system and the crucifixion of Jesus on the side of that hill and the sacrifice or almost sacrifice of Isaac on the same place. All of these events take place on the same hill right there, which means it's probably one of the most important connections between God's biblical story and the physical story on the ground in Jerusalem.
Now, where I've got the mouse right here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Show us where that would actually be, where the site of that crucifixion is.
Okay, there's 2 traditional sites.
Okay.
Okay, the first site, if you go to the left, you see there's a little cross there in the middle of the city.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so go to the Dome of the Rock.
Yeah.
And then go directly west.
Okay.
West.
Yep.
More. You see a gray dome with a cross on it.
Mm-hmm.
More on it. More.
Okay.
More. Up and to the left. Not that one. Left. There you go. That's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. By tradition, that is the site where Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrection, and there's a very good chance that that's the actual site. We're talking about a 7-minute walk from one to the other.
Oh, yeah.
What I'm trying to say is Mount Moriah and the connection between all of these events, Abraham, David and Solomon, Jesus, and later on the Holy Spirit coming down. I mean, there's no other place in the world that has all of that happening there. Now, why am I not surprised that the enemy, the deceiver, the liar, the how do you say, the manipulator, goes and puts a Muslim shrine exactly on the site where God taught the world what?
Oh, yeah.
Obedience, sin, and sacrifice and redemption actually means, because all of those words are centered on that site.
Okay, can I don't think we ever had a conversation about this, but why don't you view it as being where the Garden Tomb is, where the crucifixion was?
Okay, I got to be careful on this. I know a little bit about tanks and a little bit about history, but
Yeah.
I'm not an archaeologist.
Yep.
Okay, so the problem is that after the destruction of the Temple Mount was void. Okay,
Right.
Then the events of Jesus actually get all muddled up.
Yep.
So we're not sure exactly. So when the Byzantine Church, a lady named Helena comes to the Holy Land, and she says, "Okay, where are all the events?" And she came, by the way, in 321. 321 is 320 years after the events that we're talking about. And she said, "Where was the place where the Romans tended to crucify people?" Somebody pointed at a little temple to Venus that was sitting on the site where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is today.
Mm-hmm.
And because they thought at that time, and again, this is 1,700 years ago, they thought that the Romans had put that temple there in order to, muddy up the site where Jesus was crucified and buried.
Okay.
And that's why it's there.
Okay.
Late 1800s, a British colonel was sitting on the walls. And if you can move the map a little bit down, can we kind of pull that off?
Yep, that's really easy.
Okay, was sitting on the walls of the old city. A little bit more, there. Okay, and he's sitting. Can you see up there where the two blue dots are right there?
Yep.
And he looks up to the area where you see the green. You see the greenery right there?
Yep.
Okay, he sees a piece of stone that actually looks a little bit like a skull. And he says to himself, wait a minute, that's interesting. So he gets on his horse and goes out to Damascus Gate and rides over there. And he finds a hill, a cliff that looks like a skull that is very close to the city. You can see how close we are.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And he finds a tomb with a rolling stone combination to seal the tomb. And everything that he knows is that this is a tomb from the Roman period. And he puts two and two together and he says, maybe the traditional site of the resurrection, the crucifixion and resurrection, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, is not the right site. Maybe this makes more sense. It does make more sense in a couple of different ways. It's on the road. It's in the right place. And he buys up the plot of land. The Anglican Church later on buys up the plot of land, turns it into a beautiful garden that anybody who's been to Israel knows as the Garden Tomb. And that is the alternate site for the crucifixion, burial, and resurrection.
Not to mention the fact that in this area right here, where my mouse is kind of, it's kind of hard to point, where that skull is, they have been able to determine the fact that this actually might be the highest elevation
in the area at the time.
And if it is the highest elevation in the area, then that would make a lot of sense as well from what we read about in the Bible with respect to Christ being lifted up at the highest point, even that of the temple.
I think I've explained. My dad, who was a pastor in Jerusalem, had this way because this is a question that people have been asking for for thousands of years, hundreds of years. Sorry. He would say this.
Well, thousands, actually.
Well, no, the Garden Tomb was only in the late 1800s, I think.
Yeah, but people have been questioning the traditional site for thousands.
Let's put it this way. People have been questioning the sites for a long time. A lot of the traditions for the sites in Israel or in Jerusalem actually came together during the Byzantine period, which is 1,700 years ago. Now, we don't always know what led them to decide. Helena goes, for instance, the example I use is the Mount of Beatitudes. And there's a church on the Mount of Beatitudes overlooking the Sea of Galilee, and nobody's sure that that's the actual site. And people ask, why did Helena decide in 322, I think it was, that's the site? And there's a lot of reasons for that. But we don't know from an archaeological point of view that is the site. But it's a tradition. So on one hand, I'm going to say, wait a minute. Sometimes traditions were created out of nothing. And Jesus talked about that even while he was walking, the valleys of the Galilee. But we have to also remember that they might have known something 1,700 years ago that we don't know today.
No, that's very, very true. That's very, very true. But the idea, so this is kind of like my thought on it, and you just tell me if I'm wrong about this, because we've never had this conversation, and I kind of wish we did. The idea of it being further west of the temple and slightly north bothers me. And it bothers me because it doesn't even work out with the Via Dolorosa that everybody talks about. Even the roadway doesn't coincide.
Well, the Via Dolorosa, exactly. So the Via Dolorosa is the actually route. The Via, by the way, the Spanish people told me it's not Via Dolorosa, it's Via de la Rosa.
Yeah, Via de la Rosa. Via de la Rosa.
My Latin isn't all that great, but again, these are the traditions that were actually entrenched or embodied during the Byzantine period. So we don't really know. The Via Dolorosa is the site from the traditional site of the trial, where Jesus was tried by Pontius Pilatus.
Yep.
Okay, to the crucifixion, to Calvary. Okay. We kind of figure that the trial would have been in the main garrison of the Roman army in the city of Jerusalem at the time. That's the Antonia Fortress, which sits on the northern side. If I can do this.
Yep.
I'm pointing here, here. That's the northern side. You can see this little temple. I'm back in tour guide mode. This is fun.
No, this is but because this is your wheelhouse. Like this is where it is. And I have to ask you, this is an offline conversation. We probably shouldn't. The first time we had this conversation, we probably shouldn't have it online. But I also have questions about the Antonia Fortress and whether or not Pontius Pilate whether or not you would have found him on the Antonia Fortress.
Okay, so let's back up. I'll give you the sentence that my dad used to use when asking about whether it's it's the Garden Tomb or the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. My dad used to say, on the archaeological level, on the archaeological scale, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is higher. There's all kinds of things, including a tomb that we found from the right period that kind of dates to the right event. He says, but from a spiritual point of view, it's very hard to connect to the event in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre because it's become everything that Christianity has, traditional Christianity has become over the years. It's a very Byzantine, Catholic, Gothic, Christian traditional kind of site that it's kind of hard to connect to the event when, people are walking down the aisle mumbling weird stuff with incense in your nose. I mean, it doesn't always work. The Garden Tomb might be a little bit lower on the archaeological scale, but it's definitely a place where I go to have communion and connect to the event.
So do you think that the Garden Tomb is lower on the archaeological scale or lower on the traditional scale?
It's lower on the archaeological,
traditional
scale. It is lower on the archaeological scale. I was there with Dr. Gabi Barkai, and we kind of analyzed both the Temple Mount and the Garden Tomb. He believes that the Garden Tomb is from a later period. But I need to say this, and listen, this is Easter Sunday, okay? Whether it is the Garden Tomb, which is over here on the right, or the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is that gray dome over there, is less important. What's more important is that the tomb is empty.
Yeah, I mean, amen. Amen. Absolutely.
So we can have the the archaeological debate whether it's here or there, but again, Jesus said, and I'm kind of agreeing with him on this one: the rocks are not what is holy, and the rocks are not what is important. What's important is what happened on that hill. But let's go back to where we started. Then here come the Muslims, and they say, "Wait a minute, let's put our site, let's put our holiness on the biblical holiness of this site." And basically that's what Islam has done. And to tie that together to what we're talking about now, okay, the Hamas is sitting in the tunnels in Gaza saying, wait a minute, why hasn't the whole Arab world risen up with us? Why hasn't the Hezbollah, why aren't the Arabs in Israel? Why aren't our Arab friends in Jordan and everywhere else? Why aren't they rising up? They're frustrated, and they're pulling at all of the cards that they can pull out to create more, enthusiasm for their cause. And one of the classic Arab cards is our holy site is under stress. And they're going to say Israel wants to, and again, they started off this whole thing in the 7th of October, and they called it the Al-Aqsa flood. Al-Aqsa is their word for that temple, that site right there. And they're actually pulling the last straws that they can. The Hamas understands that they're on the edge of being annihilated. I mean, this is the grand finale of the action movie where the hero and the antagonist are actually in hand-to-hand combat right now. The bad guy is about to lose, but he's pulling on every stop. And one of the things that he's going to pull out, he says, wait a minute. I heard there's these Jews that want to rebuild the temple there. Now, you need to understand that traditionally Judaism has said this. Judaism has said that the temple, the building of the temple, is a messianic event, meaning it's a supernatural event. When the Messiah comes back, he's going to build the third temple. And for 2,000 years, that's the way the Jews dealt with not having control of Jerusalem, not having control of the Temple Mount. Okay, when the Messiah comes, we don't have to deal with it because when the Messiah comes, boom, it's going to be done. Okay, but there's a growing amount of Jews which are a fringe even of Judaism. Let's make this clear. Who are saying, wait a minute, we don't have to wait for the Messiah. This is not only a messianic event. We have to be a part of this event. We have to enhance, prepare, make way for the coming Messiah. And to do that, we're going to get ready for building the third temple.
Yep.
Okay, so that's who they are. Now, they were considered, I mean, if you'd have talked to anybody down through the history of Judaism, they were considered wacko people. Okay, most of the Jews say Messiah.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, now they've grown both in numbers and because of the way the political system works in Israel, okay, they've grown in political power. So these people actually have very strong representatives in the House of Representatives in Israel. Smotrich is one of them, and you know, and you get this idea. They're very. These are the people that connect the national Jewish nationalism with the religion. And they're the ones who are pushing for, among other things, the reinauguration of the sacrificial system, which is probably something that we're going to talk about, and the rebuilding of the temple.
Yep.
Okay. Thing is this. Okay. From a political military point of view, the Arabs have not risen up against Israel because they don't have the, how do you say, the inclination to commit suicide for the Palestinians or for the Hamas.
Yeah.
But if Israel destroys that mosque, that on the hill that you see right there,
Right.
that would probably be what the Arab world needs to kind of rally around one cause.
Yeah, more than enough to do so. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Which is why Israel on the whole is very careful not to go in or not to walk down that line.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're getting all of this together. So I doubt if Israel is planning on blowing that up and rebuilding a third temple. And no matter what the Hamas says, but the Hamas is going to yell that, okay, and use that as ammunition or use that as dynamite to try to blow up the situation that's going on in Gaza.
Okay, so you guys, there's so much to say about this.
By the way, I don't think they need to. They don't. Okay, here's the thing. I think the Hamas has given up on its own people coming to their help, and they're planning on somebody else coming to their assistance. And who's the Calvary in the Hamas's mind right now?
Well, the United States.
Joe
Yeah,
Biden.
I mean, it's terrible, but it's absolutely true. I mean, that's the situation that we're in right now, and it's very, very disturbing. I'm very disturbed by it. Which I think we should touch up on because it's going to become very interesting, especially with this whole UN Security Council crap. Forgive me for saying it; it's just a bunch of nonsense. But okay, so let's just back up because this is very, very important. I think it's kind of interesting. I'm going to go somewhere with this because we're going to we're going to really take advantage of your tour guide background, especially the military background. I believe personally, and we never even talked about this, that the Mecca of Saudi Arabia in the Arabian Peninsula didn't even exist at the time of Muhammad.
Oh, I probably agree with you on this one.
I believe that the Mecca that some people were familiar with and were aware of is Jordan, north of Jordan. There was an area called Mecca in that area. Actually, there were several areas referred to as Mecca north of Israel. Still, we're talking about Mediterranean countries, Arab countries, but we're talking about that. I don't think that there was even a population of people on the Arabian Peninsula because there was no water. The trade routes would have been untouchable, right? Because think about this, right? On the Red Sea, if you were going to do any trading and there were any ships on the Red Sea, it would be off the African coast. It would not be off the Arabian Peninsula.
The only thing that you could probably connect to from that period would be the Nabateans.
Well, correct. But can you tell everybody the problem with the Nabateans having any kind of association with what we talk about when we understand what the Quran traditionally says? And by the way, just so that we know, 9th century is the earliest copy of anything that we have. The 9th century AD is the earliest copy of anything that we have.
So here's the thing, okay? The whole question about Islam, it's more than just a question of Mecca. I mean, Islam was not written until hundreds of years later.
That's right. That's my whole point.
So what happens is, let's say, as far away from the event as we are from the, the Revolutionary War and the creation of the United States, and you want to go back and have an argument whether it was on this hill or on that hill, we don't have enough relative information, especially in a culture that does not write and does not read and does not record and things the way the Jews did. By the way, that's why the Jews were so, because we were the people of the book. And so nothing is really recorded. So people are kind of plugging in all kinds of things that are happening 300 years later to the creation of this new religion as it breaks out of the Arabian Peninsula and creates everything that it's going to create. They needed a narrative that they could live off of. By the way, part of it is this. The whole idea of the Al-Aqsa Mosque being a holy site for Muslim is part of them plugging in their narrative to the political situation on the ground. And that's basically what we're talking about. So the Nabateans were living on the Arabian Peninsula, but the Nabateans, for instance, in their religion, which was a pagan religion, there was a definite taboo of building a home.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were
100%.
They were nomadic, so they lived in tents. They lived in farms. So anybody who built a house of stone would be outcast. Okay, they were they were merchants. They had routes. They were the only one who could traverse. So nobody could live in the Arabian desert. You could only cross from place to place. Petra is a good example of that.
Yeah,
okay, and
that's right.
and you get an idea of what we're talking about. So the whole thing is actually tied in afterward. But again. And maybe we can go into this. The fact that this hill that was God's classroom, okay, now has a Muslim cap on top of it is work of the deceiver.
Oh, 100%.
And it's the fact that it is now being used to rouse support in this war that Hamas is fighting, in this terrible war that Hamas is fighting against Israel, is the deceiver using the tools he has. Now, maybe this is what we need to tie to the other one, okay? The deceiver looks around and he says, wait a minute, the tool of raising up the Arab world to support the Al-Aqsa Mosque is not working because the Arab world hasn't risen up to help them, okay? Mostly the center of Arab, theology, which is Saudi Arabia, is not behind Hamas and not behind what happened. So the deceiver looks around and he says, okay, what other tools can I use? What other tools can I use? What other tools can I use? Oh, here's Joe Biden and the American administration. And I think that's what we're seeing right now.
But see, this is, I guess this is the reason why I'm bringing up the whole thing with Saudi Arabia and wanting to talk about this, because perhaps maybe we go back to this map, because this map will help me me demonstrate where I'm going with this. And then this might make a little bit of sense to you, right? Let me do this. So here's the thing, right? You said it yourself. Nobody lived on the Arabian Peninsula during the time that everybody claims Muhammad lived, okay? By the way, you know a thing or two about Arabic. You know this. I know this. We oftentimes say Muhammad is an Islamic name. Most of the time now when you hear people say, Ismi Muhammad, you know right away, okay, there's some Islamic influence. But in the time, even in the 3rd century AD, when you would see people that had a name, heck, let's say even as early as the 5th century or 6th century or 7th century AD, you would hear people by the name of Muhammad. Muhammad had a very Christian implication tied to it. And the reason why is because when we say Muhammad, that means one who's blessed.
Yeah.
Like a blessed one, right? So this is interesting because I let's even talk about the Kaaba in Saudi Arabia, right?
The Kaaba and the Qibla inside.
Yeah.
Ugh.
When we talk about the Kaaba, or we say Kaaba in Egypt, when we talk about this, I'm going to oversimplify this for everybody, right? It's a big square or a rectangle that, if you've ever seen the pictures of these crowds spinning around it in Saudi Arabia, okay, you know what's really interesting about that? Before anything like that was ever created in Mecca, in the Arabian Peninsula, and anybody ever had any discussion about it, do you know during the time of the apparent Muhammad,
Okay.
right? Any discussion of anything like that you would see would be this square right here. And my point behind it is this, or this rectangle. My point behind it is this, Islam has had a very long history since its inception, right? In whatever, 800 AD or whatever. Since its inception, it has had a long history of hijacking the real thing, whether it be Judaism or Christianity,
Yep.
and making a doctrine that is very fictitious. I don't know how to put it. So the claim that they have on the Temple Mount, especially when we talk about the southern section of the Temple Mount, right? Al-Aqsa, and even Al-Haram al-Sharif, the Golden Dome or the Dome of the Rock, every single one of those claims is based on a series of fabrications.
Totally.
That all they did was they took what has been traditional to us for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and they created not a new tradition, because a new tradition is we go there, we're a family, we're taking on a new idea, it's a new tradition, and we started at that point. It's a fabrication.
Yeah, but they need the fabrication to be based on something existent.
Right, exactly.
So this is what the deceiver does. The deceiver actually plants his deceptions in a pot of truth. You can't do that. This is the Temple Mount. This is where God spoke to Abraham. This is where, the angel spoke to David. This is where Jesus was crucified. So he's going to take that classroom, I call it God's classroom, okay? And he's going to say, in order for me to overcome the lessons that were taught here, I'm going to put my symbol on top of that classroom. Yep. And that's what the deceiver does. Now, here's the thing. Doesn't matter what the truth is. It doesn't matter what really happened. It doesn't matter what reality is. And what I'm seeing in this whole event about what happened in Israel after the 7th of October, the truth has no meaning in our culture anymore. The truth has no relevance or no value in the world we live in anymore. People can say lies, downright lies. The Jews shoot babies in the back of the head. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. They can use these lies. Did you see Douglas Murray with that South African reporter? Okay, and she says, blah, 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 and he says, wait a minute, that's not true. Okay, she starts a question with a comment, okay? The Jews shoot the babies in the back of the head. And do you think that's right? I mean, you already made...
Right, that's right. You're through the imposition of your question, you're already making a definitive statement that has no foundation in truth.
So the Muslims say this is haram and sharif.
Yeah.
Do you think that the Jews have a right to this? Now, again, already by calling it haram and sharif, you have eradicated 2,000 years of history or 1,500 of history off the mountain.
That's right.
By calling it haram sharif, and then you start the whole discussion about, okay, now the situation is this. I mean, this is a holy site for Christians as much as any holy site in the world.
Well, and if I humored you, look, let's just say I humored you, and I said, we accept Al-Haram al-Sharif, and we, even the premise that it provides, it only brings you back to the Ottoman Empire. And the dating of the Ottoman Empire is way later than all of the foundations that we see in the city of Jerusalem and the establishment of Jerusalem.
But let's go back. Okay, why is Israel saying okay? Because again, let's go back to where we started off. Most of the Jews believe that turning this back into the Temple Mount, and by the way, not only the Jews believe, you believe the same thing, but turning this back into the Temple Mount will be a messianic event.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got fringes inside Judaism who are saying, no, we can make this happen. Okay, and sometimes, and I'm going to be careful here because I don't want to offend anybody. But
yeah, because I do want to cut in on the it will be a messianic event. I want to say this just really quickly because I want to say this for the record. Okay, you say that because a lot of people, even in Calvary Chapel, associate the rebuilding of the temple with a messianic event. It is actually a satanic event. It is an antichrist event.
Okay.
But when you say it's a messianic event, it's because there is an expectation amongst the Jews that the Messiah will be the one who will rebuild the temple.
Okay, Jim, since we are here, before the rapture or after?
Very likely after, or during or right before. I don't know.
Okay, so here's the thing, the way I see it, and I might be
Yeah.
wrong. Okay,
Yeah.
again, I'm not a biblical scholar. And again, you guys know my background. But if it happens after the rapture, it is a messianic. I mean, something messianic has to happen for that to happen.
Yeah. So let me back up for just a second. It's messianic in the sense that it's tied to a very specific timeline that involves the second coming of Christ. And of course, involves the rapture of the church. Make no mistake about it.
So
this temple that's being rebuilt is a temple that's being rebuilt for the Antichrist.
So if I decide to wipe this golden dome off the top of the hill and build another building on top of that I'm going to call the temple, what am I doing? Am I lining up with biblical?
Oh, I mean, undoubtedly. I mean, the Bible, look, this is how we know definitively that we are going to see a temple on the Temple Mount, right? You can go back to Daniel, and Daniel talks about the oblation being ceased, right? This is in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. So the abomination that causes desolate, it is in essence almost a repeat of history with what happened with Antiochus, right? Same kind of a situation. So if that has to happen, then we know there has to be a temple.
Okay.
And this is why everybody gets excited about the idea of the rebuilding of the temple, because if the rebuilding of the temple happens, then that is as significant, if not more significant, than the reestablishment of the nation of Israel.
So let's tie this together, okay? Because we've got the prophetic, we've got the biblical, and I know how that works. On the other hand, I know what's happening on the ground. And I know that if Israel blows up that building, it will be a worldwide war.
Oh, my goodness.
I know
it
that.
will be terrible.
So I think, I know that as opposed to what a lot of people are hoping that might happen, Israel is not going to allow somebody to blow up the building.
Right.
We've actually arrested the Temple Mount loyalists, what we call, okay, in the past, in order not to get that, because Israel is having a hard enough time fighting against Hamas, stuck in the tunnels in Gaza. An all-out war against the whole Muslim world would probably be a problem. And here's the thing, again, if we are in a end-time scenario, that's what's going to happen. The question is, are we there?
Yeah. We're rapidly approaching there. I think we are to a degree. Again, I'm not a date setter. As a matter of fact, I widely condemn people that have set dates. We had somebody that told us that the rapture was going to take place on September the 25th or before September the 25th last year. There was another guy who's a relatively popular, well, he's not popular, but he grew people started watching him pretty quickly, who basically said that it was going to happen sometime around September the 19th based on the Morning Star passage that you read about in Peter, which is a bunch of baloney, and these people are an embarrassment to what we do.
Well, what do you think about the eclipse?
Yeah, the look, I'm going to make myself really, really clear when we start talking about this, the eclipses and all this stuff. For a little while, I got on the bandwagon years and years and years ago on the blood moon stuff and the Yoni Khan stuff and all that. I got really big on that. And then I realized I'm making a huge error, because here's the thing everybody needs to recognize, and this is like really, really important. Like it's so critical. Everything that happens eventfully with the Jews and in the Bible is based on the lunar calendar. So when you see things take place like the Passover, and when you see all of these major events, the Feast of Trumpets and all of this, they're happening on the calendar that is associated with lunar events, even solar events. So the problem is, you can very easily say, well, the eclipse is a sign that this is going to... Wait, hold on for a second. The Bible tells us that creation speaks, right? Like we read about it even in the Old Testament. The heavens declare the glory of God, right? And the earth shows the works of his hand, in essence, okay? So all of these things are tied to a lunar calendar. To us, as Americans, it's very... exciting, because we don't associate major events with these lunar cycles, right? Jews, you look at everything on the lunar calendar and you associate events with it. So to say, hey, well, this eclipse means we're going to have a big event. No, that it's absurd. It's look, will something happen during a lunar event or a solar event? Very likely. I mean, that's we know based on how God's calendar works. Look, we base our schedule on what happens with the sun and the moon, right? But to use that as the premise for Jesus is going to come and on this day, or this is going to happen when this happens, it's erroneous. It's a huge mistake.
Well, I'm lucky to be able to say I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look.
I mean, there are people bigger, smarter, more educated than me. I really don't know.
I'm definitely bigger physically than you.
Well, yeah, and you probably
I'm smarter and more educated. I don't know.
Well, but there are other people that are bigger and smarter, more educated than both of us, who believe that they know. And I'm not going to say that they don't. I really don't know.
Yeah,
I'm going to say this.
Let me just say this, bro. I want to make myself clear. And please, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'll just say this. They've been saying this kind of stuff for years and years and years, and they get sensationalistic, and they even make their money off of selling their books and their videos over this. And the reality of it is, there's no way that anybody can make a prediction according to the Bible because of an event like this.
Well, you can't make a scientific prediction, but I see that dome there. I know historically what that hill is.
Yep.
I know present time what that dome signifies. I see my enemy rallying around the symbol of that dome and everything that means.
Yep.
And I gotta say, yeah, I can smell the clash.
Look, very much the case. Very much the case. And we know how it works with Islam, and we know how it works with organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah and all these other places. They all are big on dates and anniversaries. This is how they roll.
And I'm watching the deceiver in his element.
Yeah, of course.
Okay? I'm watching him use and manipulate. I'm watching him tweak the like I said, he uses truth, okay, or he plants his lies in ground of truth. And I'm watching him do this. I'm watching him do it to your president and your administration right now.
Oh,
I'm watching it happen, and I'm saying, wait a minute. I mean, I might not know exactly the time, but I see something's happening here.
Yeah, and the problem with that is and you bring it up really well when we talk about our administration. They've walked away from the true and living God, and because they've walked away from the true and living God and have chosen to allow themselves to become people who have strayed far from Him, their understanding and sense of righteousness is just completely gone. It's completely gone. By the way, I want to make something really clear, which I think is just really astounding. It should probably be like encouraging to you. I've never seen our chat be so slow. Ever.
What happened?
And the only reason why the chat becomes slow is when people are so deeply interested in what you're actually saying, right? That they don't want to chat. So I think that you have produced that in our audience.
Tell us if we're true, guys, because we need to see if where we're going with this.
Yep.
Am I still on tour guide mode?
Yes. This is very powerful stuff. It's really important.
Originally, the Dome of the Rock was built on the site that they had to tie in a Muslim event to. So the event they tied in Surah 17 says Muhammad got on his magical beast El Burek, or by the way, the actual name is El Barak.
Yeah,
and that's where the name Barak comes from.
That's where our former president has it.
It's the beast of Muhammad.
Yeah,
the beast that Muhammad used to ride. But he ties it to a wall, and it goes up to the top of the hill, and kicks off from the top of the hill, and goes up and have a powwow. The Arabs decide the top of the hill is what you see. So he comes to the El Aqsa Mosque, which is on one side. And this is where he kind of kicks off. So literally, by the way, there's a little gap, there's a little dent on the rock on the top where they say that he kicked off. And in the corner, by the way, I don't know if you know this, in the corner in a little kind of room behind locks is a hair from the beard of Muhammad.
Oh, that's interesting. I did not know that, actually.
And you know the weird thing? Again, I like this is Tour Guide 101. I mean, this is fun. It turns out that Muhammad was redheaded, according to Muslim tradition.
Really?
Yes.
See, this is another thing I did not know.
It turns out.
How in the world do I not know that?
When you see these very, very, how do you say, pious Muslims, sometimes they dye their beards red because, according to
No, I did that. I knew.
So
I didn't understand why.
Okay, but here's another weird thing. You want to make another weird
Wow,
connection.
it's interesting. I did not know that.
Who else was redheaded? According to the Bible, according to what we think, he was fair-headed.
Well, I mean,
King David.
King David. Yeah, we know that King David. But you know, here's something very interesting too. That they believe he at least traditionally they say this is Esau.
Yep. Okay. But here's the thing. King David spent time on this hill.
I mean, how does this not speak of how good the devil is at counterfeiting?
There you go. Again, sometimes I'm fascinated. This is what the Balagan Connection is all about, doing things like that. You get fascinated by how things tie together.
Speaking of which, you're going to release... David's releasing a video today at 2:00 that you guys can't miss. It's a great video, by the way, on the story of Esther and Purim, and it's such a great video.
Well, Iran and Persia are the same thing.
Yep.
And we're going to... But again, how these things tie together, I think, is fascinating. So the deceiver has actually, again, planted his deception on the roots of everything that we deem holy. And again, you can't... And I'll give you another one. You want another one that's weird?
Yeah, bro. I've been enjoying this. Absolutely.
So the Mount of Olives. Okay, zoom out a little bit, and you can see the right side of...
Okay, let me. I have to switch over so that we can do this here very quickly. Okay, let me. Oh, that was bad. I went to the wrong side. Hold on. We went black for a second. It's a live video. Okay, so Mount of Olives, and where are we going? You want me to zoom out? You said.
Well, you can see the right side, the kind of darker area. That's the Mount of Olives. You see the big cemetery across.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, across the Kidron Valley. So you've got Mount Moriah on one side and Mount of Olives on the other side, and the Kidron Valley in the middle. Okay, and there's a couple of very interesting things that are connected to what we're talking about. You've just now zoomed in on Palm Sunday Road.
Yep.
Because we know that the whole event, the whole series of events that we celebrate now on this weekend are an interaction between the Mount of Olives, zoom out a little bit, between the Mount of Olives and the Temple Mount. Mount Moriah on the left, Mount of Olives on the right, okay? And Jesus comes into Jerusalem on that triumphant. I mean, Palm Sunday was yesterday, day before yesterday.
Yep.
Jesus comes in triumphantly and walks down that road that you see connecting the Mount of Olives to the Temple Mount. And everybody was throwing down their clothes. And by the way, I don't know. As far as I understand, they didn't wave the palm branches.
No, they would have thrown the palm branches.
They would have thrown the palm branches. Now,
That's right.
why do you throw palm branches on the ground? Because there's no asphalt. Roads are not paved.
That's right.
Okay, so a sign of royalty as respect as you pave the road for him so he doesn't get dirty. Okay?
Yep.
That connects to the whole tradition of washing feet, by the way.
Yep.
Okay, so you get Jesus coming down on Palm Sunday Road, walking into the city triumphantly. Now, we say that the thousands of people walked behind him and before him and yelled out, save us, or you're our savior. Hoshana, literally in Hebrew means you are our savior, or save us. He walks in, but one of the things that people don't really understand, because if you're looking at the map, Mount of Olives is as high as Jerusalem is elevation-wise. By the way, the picture we have behind us, okay, is looking at Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives, meaning when Jesus walks down Palm Sunday Road with hundreds, thousands of people, okay, not only do the people that are with him see the event, everybody in Jerusalem can see across the valley at this whole parade coming down. It was a city-wide event. Everybody saw it, okay? Then he walks in, he spends time in Jerusalem, Last Supper in Jerusalem, and he goes back out to the side of the Mount of Olives. And if you look at the map right now, and if you put your mouse up there, you can see the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yep.
Okay, which is between the Mount of Olives and the Temple
wrong
Mount.
Mouse. Sorry, it's right here.
Right there.
Nice.
There's a Garden of Gethsemane. Okay. Jesus walks out to the Garden of Gethsemane, which is basically on the side of the Mount of Olives.
Yep.
And the same place where he walks in triumphantly on one event is the same place where he is actually betrayed and turned into a criminal and brought into the city the second time, okay, as a criminal this time. And that indicates, and again, that's why being a tour guide is so amazing. You get to walk these places and explain this connection between the triumphant entry, okay, and God turning in the Garden of Gethsemane, because this is where Jesus talks to his Father and says, wait a minute, maybe we don't need to do this. And from this point, he turns into a criminal. He turns into the carrier of all of our burdens, okay? And this is, again, Palm Sunday Road is the place where all of this, his triumphant entry, but the same place where the switch is made from a king, a majestic, the Son of God, the Prince, to something completely different, to a criminal and this.
Yeah, which, by the way, I want to say this. We talk about these red heifers when they talk about sacrificing these red heifers for the purpose of the dedication or the commencement of the building of the temple. They're actually talking about doing this on the Mount of Olives. A lot of people point to like this general area where my mouse is, but it's very likely that when they do this sacrifice, it's going to be right here near Gethsemane. It's kind of interesting.
It's all ties together. You want one more connection?
Yeah, please.
I love them. Okay. Go back to the book of Kings where David is actually betrayed by his own son.
Yep.
A guy named Absalom.
Yep.
Absalom takes over Jerusalem, and you see Jerusalem over there on your left. And the Bible says that David went up the side of the Mount of Olives and cried for the son that had betrayed him. And I find it fascinating that geographically that takes place in the same place where Jesus cried in Gethsemane. Literally cried so deeply that drops of blood fell, but he did not betray his Father. In the end, what does he say? This is going to be hard. This is going to be terrible. But in the end, what he says is, your will be done. And that's the difference between the story of David and his son Absalom, and the story of God with his son Jesus.
So it's funny.
And again, I find it fascinating that this takes place in the same geographical place.
All the years I've been studying the Bible, and I've always been very big on geography, I knew that when that had happened, it had to have been in that area where the Mount of Olives were. I never made the connection. Never even occurred to me that it was at the garden. That's heavy.
It's somewhere on that hill.
That's such a powerful... I always thought it would have been either north or on the other side, but you're right. And by the way, assuming that is the truth, which you're right. It has to be in that area. Actually, there's two reasons in Kings where that it would have to be the area you're talking about. That's huge. Like it just never even, because the son of David. I mean, give me a break. The root of Jesse. Are you kidding me?
The real son of David, as opposed to Jesus, who is further generations down. And David cried for him. I'll give you one more too.
I mean, but like, I just want everybody to think about this. If David cries at this place, which just makes perfect sense, right? Because his son betrayed him. Jesus, who is the great, you know, whatever, what do you want to call it? Great grandson, you know. Wow.
Okay, so here's a weird.
That's heavy.
Here's a weird one. If Jesus had sat in the Garden of Gethsemane, crying for what is about to happen, and said, "I'm not going to do it," he would have become another Absalom.
Yeah, 100%.
That completely whacks me out. Completely waxed me
Well, see, and this is what's going through my mind. So a million things are going through my mind as you're talking about this, because the other thought that went through my mind, and this is, I guarantee you, this is not anything anybody's thinking of in the immediate moment, because I think differently. But I also think about the fact that the Apostle Paul never called Jesus the second Adam. He called Jesus the last Adam. And if Jesus is the last Adam, then it fits. There's even this. Let's just say you were to talk about the idea of Absalom forsaking his father, and Jesus being the last Adam didn't forsake his father. It's just heavy. That's wow. Like, that's a big deal.
No, come on. We got to go back to Israel. We got to walk the streets and kind of make the connections, because
I know, man. I know. We're going to do a trip soon. We have to do a trip soon. Yeah.
Well, like I said, I'm going back in about a month.
Yeah.
I've got one group that's kind of playing out, and we'll see what's else. But I want to do some filming. One of the things I might do is maybe make a couple of Balagan connections like this
Yeah.
on the Mount of Olives.
Well, this is why your page is your YouTube channel is very important. Your YouTube channel is very important because these types of connections are connections that very few people can make, and that you're making. And this is why that you guys are watching. If you have not subscribed to David's channel, you
Please.
should, because he is providing a lot of very rich and deep insight about a lot of this stuff. And the video that he's going to release, you're going to really appreciate that video.
Well, I do want to kind of, the main theme of the video that I'm going to release is again, a Jewish holiday, Purim. But I can't help but say it, and I'll say it on every platform. Watch the movie, you're going to get what I'm talking about. But when Mordecai, who is the how do you say, the savior, okay, comes to Esther, and Esther is saying, okay, what am I going to do? Basically, really? And again, maybe this connects to what we just now talked about. And Esther says in the book of Esther in chapter 4, she says, I'm not sure I can do this. I don't know what we can do. And Mordecai says this. He says, God will take care of his people.
Yeah.
But you have a role to play right now in this. And he actually says a sentence in Esther chapter 4 that kind of resonates with me. He says, maybe you've been put here in this palace now. And he actually says, for such a time as this.
Yep.
And there's a feeling that I have, and a feeling that maybe I want to convey to the people also, that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, God has put you where you are for such a time as this.
Yeah.
And just remember that it's not only about what we want, and again, Jesus proved it in Gethsemane, Esther proved it, and again, we're celebrating Purim in the whole book of Esther right now. By the way, Purim is much nicer than Halloween. I mean, I've been studying it a little bit.
I don't even know why the two are being compared.
Because it's a celebration where people put on costumes.
Yeah, I get that.
But we put on costumes of nice people, of Esther and cowboys and policemen. You guys put up costumes of weird and, I mean...
Not us, man. I mean, not me.
Now, how did Christianity go down, or how did Western civilization go down to celebrate that?
South America is where a lot of this comes from. You know, it goes deeper than that, but yeah, it's really dark. It's really evil. It's really evil. The whole history behind how Western civilization and culture started celebrating the Day of the Dead and the relationship to the winter solstice and all that is crazy.
But here's the thing. This is part of the traditions, and again, this is the deceiver actually planting his seeds in something that might be originally. So, what am I going to do with your government? What do we do with this,
bro? I'm telling you, our government is doomed. So, for those of you that don't know, the United Nations Security Council has decided to draft a resolution that condemns the actions of Israel against the Palestinians or Hamas and immediately insists on a ceasefire, demands a ceasefire. We never took it seriously because we were always convinced that the one nation that had the veto power, which was the United States, would jump in and go, look, we appreciate what you're doing, but enough's enough. We're vetoing this. You're not going to be able to pass it. So the United States of America did not veto it. As a matter of fact, what the United States of America did was far worse. And that is the fact that they just basically refrained from... Abstained from voting.
Yep.
Which is basically saying, go ahead and do whatever the heck you want because we're going to sit by the sidelines. It's terrible. So we are dooming America. America's doomed. It's been doomed for a long time.
Will the administration change something? I mean, I don't believe Trump would have not vetoed that.
I'm going to tell you this right now. Look, Obama did it near the end of his tenure. I hope Biden is doing it at the end of his tenure, right? He just needs to be gone. Joe Biden needs to be gone. We need a president that will support Israel.
And a vice president.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Kamala Harris. Listen, Kamala Harris she's just okay. This is how I would characterize Kamala Harris. You ready?
She's stupid.
How about that? Not me. Al Gore, probably smarter than her. But she may be the dumbest human being to ever sit in the office of vice president ever in the history of the United States of America. And that's a pretty intense
Who's
statement.
Trump going to run with?
Who should he run with, or who is he going to run with?
Who is he going to run with?
I'm beginning to think more and more and more and more it's going to end up being Tulsi Gabbard.
Tell me about her. I don't know anything about her.
She was Democrat.
Okay.
She left the Democratic Party for a lot of different reasons. She would be not what I would consider to be ultra conservative, but she's a very pro-Trump. She's becoming more and more conservative, which would mean that he's going to he's probably going to benefit from her being the VP while he's running. Who should it be? Sarah Huckabee.
I agree.
It should probably be her, but there's also a lot of rumors that say it could be Ramaswamy.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, it would be really interesting. There's a few people that are on his short list right now that he may end up selecting. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
I can vote this time.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I mean,
You get to vote.
I passed my driving test. I don't have a learning permit anymore.
When he sent me the text, guys, it was funny. He sent me the text. He goes, "Yay, I passed." I'm like, bro, come on. It's a driving test. That's great. It's good news.
No, I'm a legal alien now.
You were never an alien in the first place. And you were never illegal. You're a citizen by birth. So, and Vinny just sent me a text on my phone. He says Marco Rubio has also been named as a potential VP, but I don't think that'll work.
So what is this week going to bring to us? Well, here's the thing. The hostage situation is on the edge. Hamas has said no again and again. And I like the fact that the United Nations is sitting down and saying to Hamas, you have to release the hostages. They're saying no from day one, and nobody's got a problem with
Yeah,
that.
I know. It's ridiculous. Why don't you make a resolution damning them?
On the other hand, I'm going to say this. I believe that Israel will go in this alone, even if we need to.
Yeah, they will. I mean, listen, Netanyahu said it. He made it clear. He's like,
he's in a sticky spot right now.
Yeah.
He's having a hard time.
Listen, I know. Oh, is that the case? Don says Tulsi is WEF. Gosh, man. That is so insane.
What's WEF?
World Economic Forum.
Oh.
She graduated from that school. If that's the case, yuck. Which that's something I didn't know. But it doesn't surprise me. Like I said, I don't trust her. I didn't think that she should be the one anyway. Sarah Sanders, man, would be the one. Sarah Huckabee.
I mean, again, I completely endorse her.
Well, I mean, you know the family personally. I mean, you guys are friends. But I mean, he would be wise to do something like that. Ugh. Goodness gracious, man. Yuck.
Okay, so next question. Tie all this together with the red heifer.
So they're taking this very seriously. And there's two main events happening that really kind of raise your eyebrow. Number one, if they're talking about sacrificing the red heifer, they're doing it so that they can produce the ashes. They can't sacrifice the red heifer according to the numbers unless they have the priest, or what they're deeming as the high priest, supervise it, oversee it, put his hand on it, bless it, all that kind of stuff. They're already doing it. And there is a very specific anointing oil that is specified that must be made for the purpose of that temple. And they would never make it because Levitically they are prohibited from making it unless they do it with the intent of understanding that they're going to anoint the temple with it. So they believe in the fact that the temple is going to be rebuilt so much in the near time that they've already made this oil. So you put those both together and you're like, man, there's got to be something we don't know that's happening, or we're just beginning to read the writing on the wall on the horizon. And I mean, they're going to build a temple.
Okay, so here's my question to you. And again, I'm kind of young and understanding on this one, but when I look at that and I tie it into the world as I know it, then the two don't come together. You can't build a temple in this political environment,
Yeah,
in this,
you're right.
in this world reality as I know it, without a major upheaval.
Yeah,
so how do
you're
the
right.
two tie together?
You're right. The thing is God will figure it out, and I'll tell you why I say that, and I'm so blatant about it. There are so many things that 30, 40 years ago you couldn't tie together.
Okay.
So, like, for example, when we talk about Iran being an enemy of Israel and the United States of America, pre-1979, before the Shah, no one could picture that. I mean, you remember, even in 78, 77, 78, if you're a Jew and you want to go to vacation, there's a few places where you would go on vacation. Number one, Sharm el-Sheikh. Some people still went there. Some people went to Turkey. But Sharm el-Sheikh it was very risky to do that, even in those days. But if you wanted to go on a nice extended vacation and you didn't want to have any problems and you wanted it to be near the Persian Gulf, and you went to Iran.
Oh yeah.
I
know Israelis who worked in Iran.
It was a beautiful place to go, but that all changed. But in the mid 70s, nobody could figure out how in the world Iran would turn against Israel.
Okay, I mean, go back 100 years, nobody would have believed Israel would be a nation. Okay,
and let's take it even a step further. When you look at the post-exilic period, we're going to turn on your tour guide hat for just a second. You know, pretty much anything after 530 BC, right? The post-exilic period, when you start looking at, even from the time of Ezra, right? The Persian ruler that just basically said, go back and rebuild, or the declaration by Longimanus in 445 to go back and rebuild, to Nehemiah, the time of Nehemiah. The Persians, Iran, has had such a huge hand in blessing Israel and helping Israel to rebuild itself.
Cyrus the Great.
Cyrus.
I mean,
you kidding me?
People put his face on the medal next to Trump's face.
Bro, there are coins that are out there in the ancient world of Cyrus. I mean, we've got coins from 200 BC.
Well, we've got modern coins with Trump and Cyrus in the same coin.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, if
they were just minted. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So people look at this and they go, well, how in the world can that happen? And look at how quickly it happened. Look at how fast Iran became an enemy. Like, literally, bro, you had 1 week in 1979 where Israel was friends and great relationship with Iran. And literally a week later, you're dead if you're a Jew and you're in Iran.
Yeah. So what's next? What's next week going to bring us?
No idea. I'm telling you, man, no idea. It's exciting. The U.S. better change its direction, or we're gonna just we're screwed. We're in huge trouble. That I can tell you. We're in massive trouble.
So, check the Balagan Connection. By the way, the movie coming out is about Purim and about Connection.
Yeah. 2:00, it's getting released, and then we are gonna get going right now. But I put the link up for locals. We are going to take some questions on locals. By the way, for those of you guys that support us, you support me on locals and my family, it's such a huge blessing. Thank you for doing that when you do that. We are very soon going to do something slightly different. And what I'm really excited about, you guys will have an opportunity to do this. It's a way of saying thank you to those of you that want to support me on a little bit more of a deeper level. We're going to start having Zoom calls once a month where we act like it's all of us in one big conversation. I'm going to see your faces and,
cool.
you know, and if there's 100 people in the Zoom call, so be it.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to do that sooner than later. And, I'm really looking forward to it, because what we're going to do is we're going to do Zoom calls, and we're going to limit the numbers of people that are in those calls. Right. So I'm actually pretty excited about that. And we're actually going to get ourselves to a Zoom call that has as few as 5 people in there, which will be a lot of fun. And I'm actually really looking forward to that. So all that stuff is coming. We're going to announce it soon and let you know when all of that is coming around the corner. And we are going to jump on and take some questions about all the stuff that we've been talking about. And David's going to be all ears. He's really good at this. So with that, let's pray and ask the Lord to go before us. Father, we thank you, Lord, for this time. I thank you so much, Lord, for our dear brother David, Lord, and just the amazing education that we just have received. What a blessing, Lord. Father, I just pray that you would keep us close to you and seeking to you, Lord, seeking you, always putting you first, Lord. Bless our Q&A time that's coming up in just a few minutes. We love you. We thank you. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, you guys. God bless you. We'll see you on Locals in about 5 to 8 minutes. God bless you.